When it comes to meringue, I take no shortcuts, and neither should you. In fact, we use a process that's slow but really reliable. I'm going to show you how to make an orange meringue pie that uses a few professional techniques to make sure that the meringue on top of your pies comes out just right. The trick to making a really good orange meringue pie is using both fresh navel oranges and fresh lemons. The lemons are necessary because they lend a tartness that oranges just don't have. But the way that you get that really rich orange flavor is by zesting 2 of the oranges and including that in the juice of the citrus. The flavorful oils packed in the orange rind will overpower any sort of lemon flavor that's in the lemon juice. So your pie filling will have that really rich, sweet orange flavor, but with the punch that comes from the tartness found in lemons. So I'm going to zest 2 of my navel oranges into this medium-sized saucepan, and then I'm going to cut each of these pieces of citrus in half and juice them until I have 1 3/4 cups of juice. If after you juice all of your citrus, you don't quite have 1 3/4 of a cup, you can just add a little bit of water to top it off until it gets to that level. Now I'm going to add my 1 3/4 cups of juice to my saucepan with the zest of 2 oranges. And then to this, I'm also going to add 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. And for right now, I'm just gonna set this aside. Now in a large mixing bowl, I'm going to combine 1/2 cup of granulated sugar with 5 tablespoons of cornstarch. And I'm gonna whisk these together until they're well incorporated. By whisking the sugar and the cornstarch together before adding the egg yolks, you make sure that there are no pockets of cornstarch that get stuck in your egg sugar mixture. Now this is well combined, I'm gonna add 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt and then 4 egg yolks. And the egg whites that I separated from these yolks, I'm gonna use to make the meringue in just a moment. Okay, and now I'm just gonna whisk this probably for about 3 minutes until it transforms and becomes light and pale in color. Now that it's incorporated, I'm gonna use a spoon to beat it for about 3 minutes until it becomes lightened and fluffy. Now that my egg yolk mixture is lightened in color and semi-liquid but still really fluffy, I'm going to take my saucepan with my juice and sugar and zest and heat it until it's simmering on the stove. As soon as my juice comes to a simmer, I'm going to slowly pour half of it into my egg yolk mixture while whisking, and this is allowing the egg yolk mixture to come up in temperature slowly rather than too quickly, which would lead to a scrambled egg pie. My juice mixture is just finished simmering, and so I'm now going to add just a splash at first. And this will help to loosen up the egg yolk and cornstarch mixture. And once that's incorporated, I'm then gonna stream in some more and whisk some more. You only need to add about half of this juice mixture. Now that we've incorporated the hot liquid into the egg yolk mixture, we can finish tempering by whisking in this now warm egg yolk mixture back into the rest of the juice. Now that this is ready to go, I'm going to put it on the stove and whisk it continuously over medium-high heat until it comes to a boil. And once it's boiling, I'm gonna continue whisking for another minute, and then I can take it off of the heat, stir in the 4 tablespoons of butter, and the orange filling is ready to go. As you're whisking the mixture over the heat, you'll notice that it's thickening, and just keep whisking until you notice bubbles breaking to the surface. Okay, bubbles are breaking the surface, so now I'm just going to continue whisking for another minute. My filling is now almost complete. I'm gonna remove it from the heat and add my 4 tablespoons of butter and just whisk in until it's completely melted. As you can see, the cornstarch thickened the mixture and the sugar dissolved beautifully so that we have a really smooth and decadent, thanks to the butter, orange filling. I'm gonna set the orange custard aside, and now we're gonna move on to the important part, the meringue. So there are a few essential steps or techniques that make this process seamless. And the first is to make sure your egg whites are at room temperature. Just pull your eggs out a few hours before you separate them and you'll have no problem. If you think about it, if the egg whites are cold and you're trying to dissolve sugar into cold egg whites versus room temperature egg whites, it's going to dissolve much easier into the room temperature egg whites. And because it will fully dissolve, you don't really run the risk of the sugar leaking from the meringue, or weeping, as you may call it, while the meringue's baking in the oven. So I have 4 egg whites here, and I'm gonna throw them in my stand mixer. Another helpful tip is to use super fine sugar if you can find it. It's not necessary. Regular granulated sugar works just fine. But super fine sugar is ground just a little bit finer. And so it dissolves quicker into the egg whites. I'm going to mix my egg whites on power level 2 for 2 full minutes, adding 1/4 of my half cup of sugar, which is 2 tablespoons. The trick to this method is to just increase the speed on your mixer by 2 increments every 2 minutes. And when you do that, you also add another 1/4 of your sugar. So I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of sugar and whip on speed level 2 for 2 minutes. Increase the speed to 4 and add 2 more tablespoons of sugar. Increase the speed to 6 and add 2 more tablespoons of sugar. And then after 2 more minutes, increase the speed to 8 and add the last 2 tablespoons of sugar. This prolonged process gives the sugar plenty of time to dissolve into the egg whites, and it allows the meringue to be really satiny and smooth, and also really sturdy. It feels like a very long 8 minutes, but I promise it's worth it because your meringue afterwards is perfect. The way that you can tell that everything's been dissolved properly is you can feel some of the meringue and rub it between your fingers, and you shouldn't be able to feel any sort of granular sugar crystals. Instead, it should just be perfectly smooth. I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees and I'm ready to assemble the pie. So I have a pie crust here that I've already baked. It's fully baked through. The 15 minutes that the pie is about to spend in the oven now is really just to set the meringue. It's not really to cook the filling or to cook the crust. So the crust needs to be fully baked beforehand. The recipe calls for a homemade crust. I used a store-bought one today. Thought I'd save myself a little bit of time. So I'm gonna take my orange filling, which at this point has cooled, and I'm going to spread it evenly in my pie shell. All right, and then on top of this, I'm going to add my meringue. And I found that to make meringue spread smoothly and then also to get the beautiful swooshes on the surface, it's best to use a spoon. My pie is ready to go into the oven just for 15 minutes. You'll notice that the surface is gonna get golden toasted brown, which is just what you want. And we're gonna pull it out, let it cool, and then give it a try. My pie has now sat at room temperature and cooled completely, and so I'm ready to slice and give it a try. You can see that the meringue is perfectly set and there isn't really any weeping happening. You can see that the layer of meringue is like perfectly set and firm, but still it's pillowy and soft and it tears easily with the fork. Time to give it a shot. The orange curd is both tart and it kind of makes your cheeks pucker a little bit, but it tastes really only of orange. It's sweet, tangy, and smooth and delicious. And then the sweet, pillowy, dissolve in your mouth nature of the meringue is truly just perfect. With this method of making meringue, you can rest assured that the meringue on top of your pie will be just right. I'm Michael Liao with Southern Living, and that's today's tip from the test kitchen. Bye.